Okay, hey guys, how are you today? Not too bad. All right, can I answer any questions for you before we get started? Okay, well, when we left off last time, we had basically gone through and we had created a full CRUD setup. So create, read, update, and delete for gadget types, which are supposed to be sort of categories of gadgets. As I recall, everything with them was working, and what we were ready to do next, the next step, was we were going to go on and create actual gadgets themselves, which could then belong to these different types. I think we had gone ahead and created the model, right? Yeah, I've got the model file here. So it looks like we set up our gadgets so that they have a name, a description, a cost, when they were acquired, and I think I remember messing up and having to go back and also put in the field so that they could be associated with the gadget types. I see here that I have gadgets set so that they belong to a particular gadget type, and yeah, gadget types have many gadgets, has many gadgets, so it looks like we've got the association set up. Oh, that's right. I think I even remember we went in the console and we created a gadget and associated it with a type, didn't we? Right. So I think we're ready to go ahead and create our controller, make sure our routes get set, and then start working on the views to get our gadgets up and working. Okay. If there weren't any other questions before we did that. Okay. I'm going to jump over to the command line. Let me go ahead and create my controller. I'm going to say Rails G controller for gadgets, and I'm going to want an index, a show, a new, and an edit page. Go ahead and get those generated. I'll pay a quick little visit here to our routes file, kind of like we did with the gadget types. There are 4 routes that were put in for us automatically by the generator. I don't actually want any of those. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put in a resources line for gadgets, which should give us all of the routes we need and some nice conveniences to go along with it. If I want to confirm that those routes appear to be set up correctly, I'm going to go out to the command line and run rake routes. There we go. Now it looks like I have all the routes I had before for my gadget types, but I also now have a good handful of routes that I'll be able to use for the gadgets themselves. So for the index page, I'll be able to just use the method gadgets path, right? Same basic thing for create, except there it'll have to be a post request, so from a form. Right? New gadget for the new gadget page, edit gadget for the edit page. Right? Plus we've got stuff in there for show, update, and destroy. So it looks like the routes are all set up and we don't really have to worry about those anymore. Alright, so in my new gadgets controller, there it is. Let's just jump through these. Right? Most of it's stuff that we've done several times now, so just for practice, let's just plow through them. Index should always give me a list of all my gadgets, so let me retrieve all my gadgets by doing gadget.all, storing that value into an instance variable. If I wanted to, if I felt the need, I could put in a respond to block so that those gadgets could not only be retrieved as an HTML view, but as JSON, as XML, as whatever it is that we need, like we talked about last time. I think I'll just go ahead and stick with the HTML for right now. Let me jump over to my gadgets index page, start filling that in. Let me leave that there. All right. Gadgets have a few more attributes with them, so instead of just displaying them as a list like I did with the gadget types, let me go ahead and create a table for the actual gadgets. Right. So let's see, first row I'll set up as a header row. Every gadget has a name, has a description, has a cost, has a, what was the other one? Oh, when it was acquired. And maybe I'll throw a couple extra THs in here because eventually I'm going to have additional cells for the edit and the destroy link. To actually go through and put all the gadgets in then, into the table, I'll take the gadgets relation that was created for me in the controller. I'll go through each one of them, yielding each gadget out to the block. For each one of the individual gadgets then, I'll create a new row in the table. First cell of the row, I need to put in the gadget's name. So in some ERB tags, gadget.name. Second row of the table, I need the gadget's description. Third row is the gadget's cost. Cost, not cast. Fourth cell, when the gadget was acquired. And I'll just put in a couple of blank cells, which is where I'll probably want to put in my edit and destroy links here in a bit. If I jump over to the browser, if I can get to it, there we go. If I go to localhost 3000/gadgets, there it is. Undefined method each. Your gadgets at gadgets here is created in your controller. You sure that part's right? Okay, very good. All right, that's what I have right now. Never put in an acquired date for the phone, did we? That's okay, we'll come back and get that. Okay. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'm going to be able to stand looking at that. That looks awful. Okay. How about I jump over to our CSS just real quick. Up under Assets, I'll go to Style Sheets. Okay. I'm going to go to my gadget css.scss file. Nothing too terribly fancy, I've just got to do something about that table. Okay. So I'm just going to say for every table, border collapse, collapse. For every TD that's inside a table, I can just nest the TD in here because we're using SCSS. I'm going to say give it a border, 1 pixel solid, and I'll just do a gray. Let me also set some padding, 10 pixels top and bottom, 20 pixels left and right. There we go. I can live with that. Okay. All right. On that index page, there's a few extra things that I might want to put in, okay, just formatting-wise. For starters, the description. The description of that particular phone is not terribly long, but it's certainly possible that the description of a particular gadget could get quite long. So on that index page, what I'm going to do is for the description, I'm going to ask Rails to truncate it using the truncate view helper we talked about a while back. If I want to see the full description, I should eventually be able to do that on the show page. But here on the main index page, where I'm just showing a list of everything, I don't necessarily want to see a full description if it's long. In this case, the description's pretty short, so it's not being truncated. Okay. The cost value should be a dollar amount. Okay. So again, I'm going to use one of the view helpers. What's it called? Number to currency? On the cost. There we go. Now it looks like money, the way it's supposed to. Might want to come back and do a little bit of formatting on the acquired date, but since we don't have an acquired date in there yet, I won't mess with it, since we won't actually be able to see the result of whatever we do. Maybe one other thing. Maybe I want to show the type of the gadget. I'm going to add another header up here at the top that says what type of gadget it is before the name. In the actual body of the table then, I want to put in the actual type there, which thanks to Active Record I should be able to get pretty easily by saying gadget.gadgetType.name. There we go. Is that all easy enough? All right, let's hit the show page next then. Back over in my gadgets controller, the show page. We'll be given an ID for which gadget to show. It'll then need to retrieve it. I'll retrieve it and put it into a variable just called @gadget. The ID itself will come from the params array. So gadget.find params ID. Save the result, store the result in gadget variable. Should be everything I need in the controller for my show page. On the index page, in order to get to the show page, I'm going to need a hyperlink. I'm just going to turn the name of the gadget into that link. So I'll link to the gadget's name. And then for the URL, I'll just give it the gadget itself, which will be interpreted as a hyperlink, or interpreted as a URL, a route to the show page for that particular gadget. There we go. Now if I click on my one gadget, it takes me over to the show page. I just need to fill in the details of what I want the show page to actually look like. So under Gadgets, Views, for the actual gadget itself, for the heading up at the top, I'll say gadget.name. In a paragraph here, I'll put in the gadget description. I'll fill in here in bold the gadget cost. Again, I want that to be displayed as a currency, so I'll do number to currency on that. Should be an E, shouldn't it? There we go. The date when it was acquired. At gadget.acquired. That's about all of the details. I might throw in a backlink. Take me back to the list, the index. That will just be gadget's path. And that's what my show page looks like. It's just too easy, isn't it? Rapid, you might even say. Okay. How about the forms? How about new and edit? New and edit, of course, for gadgets are going to end up having essentially the same form on them. So instead of starting the new page off, let me go ahead and start by creating a form partial to be used for both the new and the edit page. So under my gadgets folder, I'll go ahead and create a new file, _form.html.erb. For the actual form itself, this is going to be a form for a gadget. Render the form to a block. First field I need for my gadget, I guess, would be for the gadget's name. So let me say f.label for name. And then f.text field for name. Next up would be the description. F.label for description. And I'm going to do f.text area. Can't remember if that one's supposed to be underscored or not. Do you all remember? Think it is? Text underscore area. Okay, give it a try. All right. Next is the cost. Create a label for the cost. And then I suppose a text field is as good as anything for getting the cost. After that, when it was acquired. For when it was acquired, which is supposed to be a date, I would rather not give the user a text field. Too many different ways they could enter a date wrong, and then I would have the responsibility of parsing whatever weirdness the user happened to type in. What would be much better would be to use a select component where they can choose a month, choose a day of the month, choose a time, all of those sorts of things. The only trick with that is that those things are a giant pain to write. That's a lot of code to write a select with all 12 months, another select that has all 31 potential days, another select that has, I don't know what, 15, 20, 30 years in it, plus another select for 24 possible hours, another select for 60 possible minutes, and another select for 60 possible seconds. That's a lot of selects, right? Luckily, we don't actually have to write all those. We've got a form helper called datetime_select. So I'll just ask it to create for me a datetime_select for my acquired attribute. And then finally down at the bottom I'll create a submit button. Hopefully that'll be a good start to my form. Okay, to try the form out, let's go ahead and create our new page. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. The new page already exists. Let's just edit it. So on my new page, I'll just say render the form. I'm going to put a backlink at the bottom of the form that goes back to gadgets path in case they change their mind about creating something new. Back over on the index page then, I need a link to get me to that new page. So a new hyperlink, new gadget that's going to go to the new gadget path. Alright, so back up on my index page, click my link to go to the new gadget page. I always do that. My brain takes right off after creating the form and I forget all about what I need to do in the controller first. Right? For the new page to work, we have to have this empty gadget object for it to base itself off of. So over in the controller for the new action, I need to create that thing. There. Now my form pops up. So I've got my name field, my description field, my cost field, and this is what the date time select did for me. Pretty nice. I've got a list of lots of years in here, all the months, all the potential days of a month, all the hours, all the minutes. Okay? That's a lot of selects that it created for me. Look at all that code that it wrote. It goes on and on. Glad I didn't have to do that by hand. Okay? The datetime select isn't perfect. There are some different options you can pass to it to customize it a bit, to have it automatically start off at certain dates, certain times, to maybe have it ignore the time part or ignore the date part if you only want one or the other, if you wanted to change the order that the fields appear in. Right? There are options you can pass to it to change all those different aspects. It also has the little problem where, say you select the month of February, well, it still gives you 29, 30, and 31 as options for days for February. So it can't be trusted 100%. You might still have to pay a little bit of attention to the actual date that's submitted and make sure that date actually does appear to be valid, because it is possible to construct an invalid date using these datetime selects. But it's always a good starting point. It is a good starting point. Okay. I could go ahead and try and create a new gadget now. Okay. But there's still one thing on the form that's missing, and that's that whenever I create a new gadget, I would like to also be able to assign it a gadget type. Right? Every gadget has a type that it's supposed to belong to, and right now my form doesn't let me assign a type for my gadget. So back over on my form, I would like to make that possible. Right? Maybe up here is the very first field. F.label for the gadget type. Now, what kind of control do I want to give the user for picking a gadget type? Text field's probably not a very good idea. If I put in a text field, they could type in anything, and then what do I do with that? A select component would really be sort of the best thing. Right? Like what you just used in the Planet Lab to pick the parent planet. Same basic idea here. Having a select component that was pre-populated with all of the different gadget types that are available, right, would limit the user's potential input, what it is they could actually pick for their gadget types. So that's what I'd like to put together. Right? So what's the control we have for that? Collection select, isn't it called? Right? I can never for the life of me off the top of my head remember how to actually code these things. I always have to look it up. Okay? I think it's collection select, and then I tell it that this is going to be the value for the gadget type. And then I have to tell it where to actually get those values from. To get the values, I'm going to go to my gadget types. Okay? I want to go through all of them. And what I want to do is map them, basically reduce them down to a array, actually 2-element array. Right? So maybe I'll say for each one of the gadget types, return an array that has, I think, the name of the type as the first value and the ID of the type as the second. Right? So the name, I think, is what it would then use to actually show the user in the select component, and the ID is what it would then actually submit. That's the actual value that would then get assigned over here to become the gadget type for the new gadget that's being created. If I remember correctly. This probably will not work. I always try. 2 for 4. 4 arguments? That's insane. Who possibly could need 4 arguments? Alright, well let me look it up then. Collection select. Form options helpers. Regular old select. Maybe that's what I want. I like the look of that a lot better. Let me try that one. Instead of collection select, let me just do select. Now in the documentation here, it says that the very first argument should be what we're setting the value for, right? But they're assuming that this is just being called directly, that we're not calling it on our form object, which means we ought to be able to leave that first argument off. The second one then is the field it's going into, so that would be gadget type ID, according to what it's saying there. And then we're putting together our collection. It looks to me like I'm basically doing that right. I can't believe this last argument's actually required. Let me just see what that gives me.
It's a suggestion. You don't have to, it's not required.
Right. That seemed to do the trick. Now I'm getting my drop down with my different gadgets and different gadget types in it. That's awesome. All right. Now before I actually try submitting that form, I need to go back over to the controller and get the create method set up, the create action. So in my controller, I'll go ahead and create a create method. And I'm going to create a new gadget. And where I'm going to get the values is they're going to be submitted as parameters called gadget. The whole hash will be there, suitable to be turned into a new gadget. Then I'll say if saving that new gadget returns a true, then the gadget's been successfully saved, and what I would want to do then, I suppose, is redirect over to its show page. So I'll redirect to that gadget. Maybe I'll pass along the notice of the new gadget was created. Which reminds me, we need to go set up the show page so it can show those notices. That should be easy, right? We created a shared partial called notice last time. So up at the top of my gadget show page, or wherever it is that I want it, I could just say render shared notice. That's on the show page. I might also go ahead and stick that somewhere up near the top of my index page, because when I start deleting things, I'll probably want to be able to show notices there as well. Back in the controller then. So if saving the gadget goes well, I redirect to the gadget show page. I pass along a notice, which should now be displayed. If saving the gadget goes poorly, then what I want to just do is re-render the new page. All right. Let me give it a try. My new gadget page. I'll select gadget type phone. For name, I'll say iPhone 3G. For the description, I'll say second generation iPhone with 3G cellular service, black with plastic backing. Trying to make a slightly longer description so we can see if it truncates. For the cost, I'm going to say it cost $250. For when it was acquired, I honestly don't really remember. I'll say it was March 28th, 2010. Tell it to create gadget, and that didn't work. I got an error that says can't mass assign protected attributes, gadget type ID. So over in my gadget, it's talking about this adder accessible line that's saying what's accessible and what isn't. Right? Gadget type ID is not listed in there. Does it really need to be? I'm not 100% sure. Let's see. In my form, instead of saying gadget type ID there, what if I just said gadget type? Let me try again. iPhone 3G. Second gen iPhone. I should have known better than to type in that long description, assuming that everything was going to work. I'm not going to bother with it again. $250, 2010. Create gadget. And it doesn't like that either. Alright, well, I don't see any other way other than making that value mass assignable. So back over in my gadget class, let me put in gadget type ID as one of my adder accessibles. I'll go back to the form again, and I'm going to change that back to gadget type ID. See how that goes. Alright, third try at my form. iPhone 3G, second gen iPhone, $250, 2010. That looks like it works. New gadget was created, it tells me. If I go back, it does look like it's part of the phone category, the phone gadget type. I think maybe we did it. Fantastic. Fantastico.
Can you go to the select thing real quick? What was the gadget? Is the gadget type ID what's being assigned to?
Yeah.
Okay.
The select maps to that attribute of the gadget, so that's where the value ends up being placed. Super. All right. One thing that's still off on our new page is if we have validation problems, nothing's currently being shown. A little bit of CSS would get the red borders and highlights showing in the form itself. I don't care so much about that. That's just a little bit of CSS. But I do want to see my errors up at the top of the form. Right? We already did that with the gadget types. We had this little section of code up at the top of the gadget types form, which displayed the gadget type errors for us. I could copy and paste that and then slightly modify it in order to have the errors displayed at the top of the gadget form. Is there a better way, though? Could we maybe turn that into a partial? We could give it a shot. The trick to it, though, is going to be, if it's a partial, what do we put in place of gadget type? It would work fine as a partial if it's being used from the gadget type form. But if it's being used from the gadget form, there would be no gadget type, so it wouldn't work at all. So what could we do? We'll figure it out. I'm going to chop it out of the top of my gadget type form. I'm going to go over to my shared folder, make a new file there. I'll call it _form errors, HTML-ERB. I'll paste the code back into that new page. Okay. Up at the top of my gadget type form, then I could say render, bless you, shared /form errors. I could also then render shared /form errors from somewhere up at the top of my gadget form. On my new form now, if I reload, I get an error. Line 1 of the form errors partial, it says I have an undefined method called errors for nil. If I look at the partial, line 1, here's where I'm calling the errors method. I'm calling it on this at gadget type, so that must be what's nil. That makes sense, doesn't it? If I'm on the gadget form, but I'm trying to get a gadget type, well, there is no gadget type variable, instance variable. So this is nil, so I can't call that method. So what I really need is I need a way to sort of abstract the model type. Since I'm trying to use this partial in a place where there's multiple different objects, multiple different models that may end up being needed, I can't be specific in here. I can't specifically say gadget or gadget type. I just have to go with whatever is available, or I need some way to tell the partial what's available. What if we, for example, just generically said for whatever model we have, what are the errors? Right? So wherever I was saying gadget type before, let me just change that to model. So it's not all that specific anymore. Now, if I remember correctly, when we actually call render to render that partial, I think we can include a second argument here called locals. And what we can do with locals, if it still works and if I'm remembering correctly, is we can use it to create and assign values to local variables that exist inside the partial. So I could basically say in that partial, make a local variable called model and give it the value of, in this case, gadget. Nah, I didn't like that, did it? Still get the exact same error. Okay. Now, when I actually do create a local in a partial, is it considered a instance variable? What if I just said model with no at in front of it? Undefined local variable or method model. This doesn't seem to be working at all, does it? I still have faith that it's possible. I just imagine I'm probably doing it wrong. Okay. Let me come back over. What if I said partial is that, locals is this other thing? Nope, still not good. Still not good. Alright, maybe it's documentation time again. Right. Rails, render, partial, locals. Looks like it's taking me to one of the Rails guides. Let me just search for locals. Whoa, just jumped. Other than the hash syntax that's being used, does that not look basically like what I'm doing? Looks about right to me. Partial, P-A-R-T-I-A-L. And I'm telling it that's that. It is working?
Yeah, it's working on mine.
Ah. Interesting. Well, why not for me? Oh, maybe it is. I just wasn't refreshing the page in the way that it was reloading the right part of the code. Maybe it is. No, when I submit, I'm still getting my error.
Looks like you need to change the model, or take the ampersand off the end.
Oh, did I change it in one place but not another? Yeah, you're right. The error is not on line 1 anymore. It's on line 4. So when I was trying to get it to work, I left it inconsistent, where I was using a local variable name there, but I was still using an instance variable everywhere else. There we go. Glad you noticed that. Thank you. That's it. Name can't be blank. Cost can't be blank. Good. How about back over on gadget types? When I render my form errors partial for gadget types, I'll need to make that same basic change then. So here's my form partial for gadget types. I'll say this is the partial. Here are the locals. I'll say create a model local and give it the gadget type. Let's see. When I go to my new gadget type page then, looks like it's working. Good. So there, kept ourselves from having to repeat that form error displaying code. Oh wait, there's one other little issue here, isn't there? When I go to create a new gadget, it says 2 errors kept this type from being saved. Well, I'm not trying to save a type, I'm trying to save a gadget. It's got the wrong name there. I had the name hard-coded in. I wonder if there's a way we could retrieve the actual name of the model from the model itself. Right there, instead of type, what if I put in model.class? Maybe toString? There. So now for gadget it says 2 errors kept this gadget from being saved. Over on gadget type it should say errors kept this gadget type from being saved. We could manipulate that string further if we wanted to, play with the capitalization and whatnot. But that's the basic idea. Seem alright? All right, super. So I think we've got the new page set up. How about updating then? Let me clear a few of these pages out. Okay, let me go to my update page for Gadget, the edit page. Editing Gadget. I'll just say render the form. Down at the bottom, create a link to the word back that will take me back to my gadgets path. Oh, and of course on the index page I need a link for the update. So back over on my index page, in one of these blank cells I left myself after a particular gadget, let me link to edit, and I'll go to the edit gadget path, and I'll pass it the gadget to edit when that link is clicked. So now I have my edit links in there. If I go back and I edit my original iPhone 1, I get an error about my errors array again. This time I don't think there's anything wrong with the partial. This time the problem is I haven't set up the controller. So the controller is not retrieving the model and making it available to the partial. Okay. So over in my gadgets controller in the edit action, I need to retrieve the gadget, which will be easy to do because we were given its ID. There we go. Now I can edit. I could go back and finally set a date for that original iPhone. Can't submit yet though, because in the controller we then also need our update action. The update action will need to start by retrieving the gadget itself, just like we just did for edit. But then for that gadget we want to update the attributes, which are available in the params array as gadget. That may succeed, may fail, so we'll put that into an if else. If it succeeds, let's redirect to the show page for that gadget, pass along the notice. The gadget was updated. If it fails, let's just re-render the edit page. Alright, I'll try submitting the update for my iPhone. There it is. It has the date in it now, which it didn't have before. Beautiful. Right. Let me edit the iPhone 2. I'm going to make the description longer. Hopefully it'll take this time. I'll update it. There we go. You can see the longer description is being truncated back on my index page as it should. Oh, I also wanted to do something about this acquired date. With that acquired date, back over on my index page, right here, I could ask to have it turned into a string, and then there's some options I could pass. Let's try long ordinal, I believe it is. Looks a little bit more like what we would be accustomed to. I might also want to do the same thing over on the show page. But what might actually even be better than that is instead of doing that at all, I'm going to take that code back out of the index page. So I'm right back to that original uglier view. What if I actually went to my gadget model file and put in an acquired method, essentially overriding the default acquired method? So whenever it's called, we return acquired in the format that we specifically want. We haven't done anything like that since back when we were playing with Active Record. Right? Every gadget model already had an acquired method that simply returned the acquired value in whatever its default format was. But here we're overriding that method. So whenever we call acquired, we'll still get the acquired value from the model itself, from the database essentially, but we'll put it into the proper format when we return it. Bit of a problem there. Okay. We've got the acquired method calling the acquired method. Okay. So I end up getting an error that says stack level too deep. Maybe what I want to do is not call my method acquired. Maybe I should call it something else. What if I called it formatted acquired? Then, whenever I want to show that acquired date, I could just do formatted acquired instead. So I'll do that on my index page, I'll do that on my show page. Yeah. The advantage to that being that if I wanted to change the format of how I show the date, I could now just change it there in my formatted acquired method in the actual gadget model instead of having to track down all of the many potential places where I might be displaying that and have to change it all over. What's left then? Need to be able to destroy. Let me go ahead and go to my gadgets controller. I'll put in my destroy method. I'll go ahead and find a gadget by an ID. Once I find it, I'll destroy it. And then I'll redirect over to the home page, the list, gadgets path, and send along the notice the gadget was destroyed. Back over on the index page then, I need my actual destroy link. So in my last little cell I left myself there, I'll link to destroy. I just need to pass it the gadget, and I need to set the method to delete. It's a delete link. There we go. Let me make a new test gadget. I'll say it's a tablet. I'll just put in some test data. There we go. I'll destroy it. Seems to work like a charm. We got that done pretty quick. Can you imagine back in PHP putting together a full CRUD controller like that in under an hour? We're about 4 minutes short of an hour since we started. But we got it all done. It's even a little bit more complex than a lot of real simple ones that we've played with before because we have the additional relationship with the gadget type that we had to deal with in the form. And we didn't even just plow our way through it as fast as possible. We were actually pretty careful as we went through to make sure that we were setting it up in a dry manner. So we have reusable components for showing our form errors, for example. We could actually reuse that anywhere, other projects even, as long as we remember how to call it with the locals. That's the only trick. So we did a good job. There might be just a few more little touches that I might want to throw in this. Different ways to kind of integrate together the gadgets and the gadget types. Right now the gadgets list what type they belong to. I might want to turn that into a hyperlink. So here on the index page for my gadgets, where I'm showing the gadget type, I'll turn that into a hyperlink, and let's have it go to the gadget type path. And I want to pass it the specific gadget type, which I can get from this gadget, like that. So whenever I click on this link, I want to go to that specific gadget show page. So if I click on my phone type for one of my phones now, it takes me over to the show page for gadget type phone, which is quite boring at the moment. Let's go back to that page though. And how about on the show page for a gadget type, we have it list all the gadgets of that type. So the show page for gadget types, which is just this right now, let's see, let's throw in here at gadget type dot gadgets for each one. We'll yield it to a block. Let's display all of them. I don't know, we could just display them as a simple little list. Gadget.name followed by a break. So there it's listing the two phones I have. Maybe I would like those to be hyperlinks too, so I could click on one of the gadgets in the phone list and have it take me over to the show page specifically for that gadget. I'll link to that gadget's name. The hyperlink itself will just be the gadget itself. So if I click on the 3G iPhone, it takes me over to the show page for it. Would it be hard to get it to show me a total of all the money I've spent on this type of gadget? Gadget type.gadgets is a relation, like an array. The inject method lets us go through and sum up values. What if I did total equals at gadget type dot gadget dot inject? Let's see, with inject you have to give it two parameters. One's like a counter, an accumulator, for adding up the value. The other is the actual object that's being yielded to the block. And those go in which order? I don't remember. Let's just try it this way. Let's do sum and gadget. And let's say each pass through, let's add to the current value of sum that gadget's cost. Let's see. Then let's say, I want to do that as a paragraph. I'm going to do an H4. Total spent on gadget type.name. Maybe I'll say pluralize. At gadget type dot gadget dot count. Over here, gadget type dot name. So count of the gadgets used to pluralize the name of the gadget type. I'm hoping that'll come back and say 2 phones. Total spent on 2 phones is, and then let's say number 2 currency, and we'll display our total. That did not work. Line 9. Oh, this should be gadgets right there. Now it's saying it doesn't like the plus sign. For gadget, I probably put these two backwards. Let me switch my arguments here. Gadget first and then sum. Doesn't like that either. Undefined method plus for gadget. Oh, I know what it is. I warned you guys about this back in Ruby. This was a test. Shame on both of you for not realizing what I did. Right? At the end of an inject iteration, it always returns that last value. I think it's returning the actual gadget itself. That then becomes the value of sum for the next one. So, trying to remember, what do we want to do? Return sum? All right. Let's say sum plus equals gadget.cost sum plus for nil. Now are those, oh, forgot the second one. Okay, are they backwards? Still nothing. All right, inject. Why do you always thwart me? Inject. Sum comes first. Don't have to do the assignment, just have to add. Still unhappy. It's always the littlest things, isn't it? We're starting off at a value of 0. Undefined method gadget for gadget type. Yeah. Well, that should be the gadget that's being yielded, which comes from over here, gadgets for the gadget type. Why you no work? Oh, wait. Not paying enough attention. It is working. The error's moved. Now it's pointing at line 16. Well, yeah. Maybe it's not working, but it's not causing the error. Maybe it is working. Look at that. $1,050. The two phones part worked. How much did the two phones cost? One was $800, the other was $250. So yeah, that's right. Cool. What about my other types? Calculator type? Total spent on 0 calculators is $0. Yeah, I'd say that's probably right. My phones. Make another new gadget. Let's make a tablet. Let's do an iPad. First generation iPad with 64 megabytes storage. Cost $400. Acquired 2011. There we go. That seems good. You know, a little navigation might be good too, just as a last thing. Under layouts, I'm going to go to my application HTML ERB. I'm going to put in a little navigation section up at the top. That's funny. I'm going to say link to types, gadget types path. Should have been an underscore. Link to gadgets, gadgets path. There. So now all of my pages will have little navigation up at the top I can use to jump back and forth between gadgets and types.
Is that how the planet one was done for satellites?
What's that?
Is that how the satellites one was done?
With that one, I actually created the navigation as a partial, and then I might have just required it or rendered it here. I can't remember.
Can you go back to the show page real quick for
For
the other one?
Yeah, the complicated one, the interesting one. Yeah, there it is. Anyway, hopefully that was a good quick little review of basically everything we've gone through. We have one last little thing to talk about with controllers. Once we're done with that, though, we'll be ready to move on with routes. But I think we're in pretty good shape the way we are right now. Do you guys have any questions about anything? All right. Well, yeah, it's about that time. Let's go ahead and shut down for today. Next week, we'll talk about controller filters, and then we'll get started on routes. Hope you all have a good weekend.